All right, well, hi everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time on a Friday to come and talk to everyone else about the brilliant things that are happening with you and your colleges and, of course, your students, which is why we're all here. I think everybody knows me, and maybe we can just go around quickly and just introduce ourselves, maybe name and specialty and college. So how about let's start with you, Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I am in the College of Natural Science and Mathematics. I am a math instructor, and I was actually a student from the years 2008 to 2015 for my undergrad and master's here. So an undergrad, a master's, and now an instructor.
Fantastic. It's just like me. I'm always a student. I've never left college.
Absolutely. I'm always a student.
How about you, Sarah?
My name is Sarah Schrank. I'm in the College of Liberal Arts, and I teach modern American history in the Department of History.
And you've just published a book, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
another one.
I specialize in American cultural history, and I published a new book that just came out last summer called Free and Natural: Nudity and the American Cult of the Body.
Okay, and we're going to illustrate that today. No.
Exactly, for everyone, the entire university community.
How about you, Sabrina?
Hi, I am Sabrina Landa. I am a lecturer in accounting, and I'm excited this last year now on full-time for the department. So again, in the College of Business. It's been a great ride. I've been here now 5 years and just absolutely love what I do for the school and for the students. Just found what I love. So.
Fantastic. And I believe you've got a long history of being a controller and a CFO and working in industry and all kinds of impressive things.
So I come from 20 years of experience in the field. I know it's kind of hard to believe, but my first job was in accounting. So that's how I can include that one in. And so, yeah, I've really very fortunate to have the prior work experience to be able to bring into the classroom. And I teach AIS, which is a little bit of technology. So, we're going into the next level in our profession with a lot of new things. So I have one foot in industry and everything else in academia. So it's exciting.
Fantastic. Well, we're lucky to have you. How about you, Daniel?
Oh, thank you. My name is Daniel Whistler. I'm an assistant professor in Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. And my specialty, or at least my classes, is a lot on materials, structures, and then how do you test them, understand them. So a lot of hands-on.
Fantastic. So you're responsible for teaching our students to keep all the bridges and roads and all the other structures that keep our society going up and running. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about you, Noah?
Hi, I'm Noah Asher Golden, and I'm honored to be a faculty member in the College of Education. My areas of expertise are secondary literacy and culturally responsive pedagogy, and it's great to be here.
Terrific. We're happy to have you here. What about David?
I'm David Waldman from the Department of Film and Electronic Arts in the College of the Arts, and my area is cinematography.
Fantastic. And I believe you've also just finished a successful stint as a search committee looking for a new tenure track faculty member.
As a matter of fact, we have. At your pleasure, sir.
Right. I believe you'll be hearing good news about 2 people later on.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. And last but not least is, I think, one of our newest chairs, Pei Fang.
Hi, my name is Pei Fang Huang. I am associate professor in Department of Speech and Language Pathology, and that is in College of Health and Human Services. My specialty or the classes I've been teaching are related to neurogenic language disorders, traumatic brain injury, swallowing disorders after like any kind of acquired brain injury. So we have a lot of clinical practicum components into our program. So that's me. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. And Pei Fang is also on your Senate Executive Committee on the Academic Senate. So that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's start off with these mysterious and difficult questions. What's the most significant change you've experienced as all our classrooms have suddenly gone over into this alternative COVID-19 modality? Sarah, go ahead.
Sure. And we were just talking about this before you joined us, but for many of us, and certainly for me, it's the loss of the face-to-face experience, of course, being in the classroom. And a key piece of that is the loss of the organic experience of delivering material in the moment and responding to student questions and intrigue at the time that you're delivering your material. And it's been the biggest challenge, certainly for me and for many of us, is in how do you replicate that organic experience of knowing where you want to land an idea and a set of concepts, but leaving yourself open to take multiple different paths, like the different stories that you tell in a classroom. Suddenly you don't have that venue any longer. And that's been the biggest challenge and the most sort of place of strategy and tactic to try to still engage the students, get the material across, and not have it just be a canned, a canned piece of information without that connection.
Right, indeed. David, perhaps as a film expert, you can sort of have some experience in making the screen appear real or disappear. Have you experienced that, or?
Yeah, I think we were having a short conversation about this before. It is really difficult to create the kind of organic connection that we generally all thrive on in front of our students through a two-dimensional medium like Zoom, or any video medium for that matter. And one of the tools that we have in the profession that we avail ourselves of is the ability to have different angles of the same action, to be able to cut between and among, different size shots or different camera from a different position, and we don't have that via Zoom. So I think that's a big hindrance. And I would say, just going back to your initial question, the biggest challenge that I've encountered is just the nature of my classes. I teach 5-hour and 45-minute activity classes, and while lecture material is certainly deliverable via Zoom or whatever, maybe pre-recorded or live Zoom conversations, there's a practical component to the class that can't be replicated. At some point, these students have to touch cameras, and they have to touch lighting equipment in order to frame shots and to learn the nuances of executing a well-planned project. And that's been the most challenging part for both me and for them, I think, in this transition.
Right. I'm absolutely sure that's true for many of us. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to be in an instructor situation in a class and not be in a class. Although I actually have done it myself. When I was in Australia, I used to lecture or attempt to lecture to an online version of my introductory statistics class. And as you know, introductory statistics is always a popular, happy class. And people definitely felt happier because they were thousands of miles away from me. But eventually, I think, I did get into the rhythm of being in a two-dimensional situation. And what was best for me was that I did get to know the students not in the same way, but at least in an effective way, so that I could understand that this student was shyer and this student was more confident, and all those things that one finds in a general classroom anyway. But back to you. Noah, you sort of have quite a lot of professional expertise in moving between silos, moving between fields. How has this affected you in education?
Well, the similarity between K-12 education and higher education, I agree with my colleagues, is that in-person connection. And the thing that changed the most and that I really miss the most are those little in-between moments. Just like academic conferences, sometimes the best pieces are the thing that happens after a session or that question that's posed during a break. And that's been hard to replicate. But I think it's really important in teacher education, but in every single field that we're engaging in teaching here at the beach, is to model for our students how to be compassionate and supportive during a time of crisis. Particularly in my field, I speak very openly with my students about the fact that I am trying and I'm hoping to receive feedback about what I'm doing well and where I can grow, to model the ways that we can support students during an uncertain time. I'm being very open with my students, one of whom came to office hours yesterday via Zoom and said, you know, I'm really curious about your thoughts about the job market or how student teaching is going to go next semester. So I'm trying to be a mentor and share what I know and be very honest about all the things that none of us know at this point. But the in-between moments are things that I miss the most right now. And I've been playing with all the digital tools that we have, just like my colleagues here, to try to recreate that and make that as organic as possible. And one way of doing that on Zoom, for example, is I found early on that I don't particularly like the hand raising function on Zoom. I think it leads to this sort of artificiality and sort of stunts, that natural flow of conversation. And it leads to so many missteps. Students speak over each other, people cut each other off, but then again, that happens in a real session too, when we're having an open format. So we're all making our way together and making the road as we walk it.
I think what I'm hearing from you, Noah, is just an echo of, I believe it was Martin Buber who said all real teaching is relationship. And that ability to relate to one's students and of course to one's instructor in that authentic way is so crucial and much more difficult at this, with Zoom. I guess one of the other things that's happened is that we've seen not just one transition, but many. There's it seems almost every day there's a new issue, a new transition, a new problem, a new solution. I guess as an engineer, Daniel, you're used to working with problems and solutions, but how have you found in your teaching the ability to handle the constant change?
Well, thank you. Yeah, so definitely a lot of nuances. So playing off of some of the other things, we lose a lot of that interpersonal communication, nonverbal communication, which lets me know not just do they understand what's going on in the classroom, but also how are they doing? Even asking that question nowadays is I don't know the whole background of what's going on because I don't even see them anymore. So when we get to all these tools, for me, the biggest question or the biggest challenge or the problem going forward is how will this tool, whatever it may be, online or Zoom or otherwise, how will it help us advance the, not just learning, but putting the humanity to these things so we can actually see the students' progress and see their growth? Because I could sit there and lecture easily and using Zoom, and then I find out halfway through the class that 2 students didn't have internet access, or they say, well, my cat or my dog or my family or something is in the background. I can't really focus. So my question isn't, is Zoom the right platform or is any tool the right platform? But how do we transcend beyond just the immediate one little step and go further and say, what is the ultimate goal and how can we try to achieve that one? That's a big problem. So we pick at it, but I'm not sure if we have the exact combination just yet. So wrapping my head around that issue.
Right. It's again, I think it was W.H. Auden who described the lecture method as a professor is a person who speaks in someone else's sleep.
I love Auden, by the way. I'm sorry.
Yes, I do too. And you should read his poetry, even if you haven't. But he was also very witty. And but I mean, turning, you know, it's so interesting to hear that focus on the humanities from an engineer and going to a mathematician. Leslie, how, what do you think have been sort of the biggest obstacles for you in this new situation?
Right. Well, I mainly teach calculus, and calculus is hard enough without all of this going on.
But how beautiful.
Right. So really having an open communication with my students regularly really helps. It shows that you care. But I think the biggest the biggest tool that's helped me is to not be rigid in my thinking and how to you know, move class on from now on. Students and, you know, faculty most of the time, they get into this rhythm, they get into this habit of, you know, I come to school on these days, nobody bothers me on these days, I come to class, I focus on this time. And now without that, a lot of it, for some students, it just starts just to dissolve. They don't, it's hard for them to keep, you know, a schedule and a habit. And so trying some things, seeing if they work, talking to students, asking, did this work for you? Did this not work? What did you like about this? And being able to adapt, you know, daily, weekly, to meet students' needs has you know, has really kept me on my toes, but has helped me and has helped my students, I feel like, a lot. Another big, you know, challenge that we didn't have before so much was we have to be very accommodating to students, because our general population of students is between the ages of like 17 or 18 to 21. Most of our students if they have a job, they're classified as essential workers. They're working at grocery stores, they're working at gas stations. And so, you know, their schedules have changed, and, you know, it's my job to try to help accommodate those changes to them, because, you know, it's not their fault that this has happened. And, you know, some students have to go back home, live with their parents, to help take care of, you know, grandparents, help take care of, you know, 4 younger children. And it's been very overwhelming for students, but I think just being there for them and being understanding and listening to them and showing that you're willing to adapt and accommodate for their sudden changes has helped alleviate a lot of stress in our students and just helped them a lot.
Well, it sounds like you're doing an absolutely wonderful job there. And what's interesting is that you raised this issue of, even though we all know it's a terrible situation and people are facing the most horrifying or distressing or difficult times, whether it's with family or friends or their own situation, still you've managed to kind of transform that into something of a positive by being adaptable and flexible and so on. So
I'm not perfect, but I try.
Hey Fang, do you have experience of any other positive surprises that have come out of this relative nightmare?
Yes, absolutely. So one big part of our college is involving or requiring the clinical practicum part. For example, nursing, physical therapy, my department, speech and language pathology, wanting to use the common word speech therapy. So we serve clients who has special needs. And then when we make this transition, the clinical practicum part become really challenging. So we do not only work with students, but also there are a group of clients who our students serve, so they can establish those essential clinical skills. So my department, for example, we're trying to use this telehealth model. So we continue to provide therapy using Zoom telehealth platform. So that's not regular Zoom, that is another platform, so we can comply the HIPAA regulation and the privacy protection, a protective platform. The clients we serve, those are clients who has stroke, brain injury, so they lost their ability to talk, to communicate. A lot of them rely on nonverbal communication. So transition to telehealth, it has been quite challenging for them. Many of them, they are not familiar with technology. So our students, they have to go above and beyond to not just learning, developing their own clinical skills, but also training their patients, their clients using computers or cell phones. And that has been quite a transition. But there's a silver lining. Many of the clients, they actually appreciate the telehealth in a way, surprisingly, because they don't have to commute. A lot of time, they cannot drive because of stroke or TBI. So commute has been a problem for them. Now they don't have to commute and they can still get therapy at home. So we get a lot of overwhelming positive feedback from our clients saying they also appreciate with our services, and also they are so, I would say, happy with the kind of alternative modes continue their services in that way. So that's positive parts. Our students also, they are trying to learn how to deliver therapy in a creative way. So patients cannot communicate, so they use different functions, different programs. For example, there's a function on Zoom called whiteboard. So they launch the whiteboard and then have the client to write something, draw something, and so clients still can communicate. And those group of individuals that have been socially isolated for such a long time, if they cannot continue their services, that significantly affect their quality of life. But with the new telehealth model, they can still socially connected to a professional, students. Many of our clients, students, they are so pleased by this transition. And we got a bunch of clients saying they look forward to the daily Zoom meetings with students because that is the only thing they look forward to. So
fascinating.
yes,
Well,
it's some positive feedback. Yeah,
absolutely. It sounds like it, and certainly I can agree. You know, my commute has been reduced from 55 minutes to 30 seconds up the stairs. So that's very nice. So Sabrina, have you also experienced this kind of positive, surprising, perhaps positive issues? And do you think they'll stay afterwards? I mean, when we go back to normal, which we hope will be soon, will we retain some of what we've learned now?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, my take on the positive aspect is the community that we built, not only, you know, with the student, you know, they want to hear from me, and I am doing my best to communicate, whether, so I do synchronous class sessions, or I also post the after those sessions, the same material, and having that, the need to communicate has allowed me to see just how critical it is for the timely responses. So I think the positive is that you're really seeing what students are craving and what was working in the classroom beforehand. So by having that stripped away from us, we have a very unique perspective of looking into what we can improve and what is essential to the student experience. And so if our students succeed, we succeed. So my take on that is, you know, and I know that our college as a whole is really working hard to come up with at least that we have the tools to be the best we can be in such a short period of time, you know. And so this isn't a normal time to convert your class online, but one thing that has come across is now we have all of the resources available to us, and all of the faculty know that they're available, and we have that communication. If we're talking with our students, we're asking our students, you know, how are things going? You know, we know that this too shall pass, right? So this is a crisis that is hit us, and it's hit the globe. We're not unique to everything we're experiencing, which also makes it it allows us as faculty to be more vulnerable than normal, because we have the opportunity to try something new and it might not work, right? And it's perfectly okay, right? So and asking the student how the experience was, we might be able to keep some of these videos. This is a lot of work. Leslie has put in a lot of work into her videos. I know that I have, and I know that those of you that are in here, we put a lot of work into the content. That content is valuable. So we can post that for the student that struggles, even when we get back to face-to-face. We can post all that content into our courses for the alternative scenarios for students. Not every student is fortunate to not have to work and to really grind through college, right? And make it through to graduation. Some students have a lot of responsibility, whether it's financial or familial
Sure.
expectations. So we have to say, hey, at this point, if we all do the best that we possibly can to create quality materials during this period of time, which is phenomenal for us to be able to do in such a short turnaround, let's use those, and let's find out from the students what worked for them, and then embed that into our face-to-face in the future to just augment and support the learning. And I think that that's how we can really turn around and improve. Not to mention just opening up maybe additional online sections for the population of students that get to choose it this time. Okay? So giving them that choice in the future, and it also has a lot of benefit. I'm, again, the accountant, so there's a benefit to some degree, right, of well-designed online delivery education. So if we can talk through that and make it work for all parties involved, I think that we can make this as good of an outcome as possible, and again, keeping the student in the center.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things I've said before is that in some ways this crisis has brought out the very best in everybody. And since, for example, Long Beach faculty are already the best, it's just another way of showing your excellence and innovation and creativity as you move into this new environment and discover new things. I particularly liked your statement about vulnerability, because it's not just with faculty who have become increasingly vulnerable. It's administrators, students, staff. None of us have really faced this before, and we're all facing it together, and I think by and large triumphing in the face of really quite horrific tragedy and illness and disruption. So it's a remarkable achievement. So you should all sort of pat yourselves on the back for it and say you deserve it. If there's one thing you had to share with your students, your faculty, your families, what would you say that you haven't already said? And I'm not going to sort of call on anyone, just anyone. Go ahead, Sarah, come on.
It's also a follow-up to Sabrina's really great commentary and your question, but it's something that I think we can take more generally. And I've found that if I boil my whole strategy down for just dealing with any of this, whether it's just COVID, my own world, my students, my colleagues, it's communication, clarity, and consistency. So if I'm going to schedule a Zoom meeting, whether it's with my friends or colleagues or with my students, I communicate as clearly as I can and try to both get as much into that meeting, but also share the weird things that are going on in our daily lives, like sort of the funny things, what it means to have your square footage be reduced to 1,000 as opposed to the miles that we drive. I'm trying to be very clear about what I'm trying to say. And maybe you come to your Zoom meeting feeling upset. Well, maybe that's not what you need to be clarifying that moment for your students, or maybe it's not even that helpful for your colleagues. So it's a clarity of mind, but it's also a clarity of expression. And it's a little bit hard, because we're all under all of these pressures, but it's something we're thinking about. And I was mentioning it prior to you coming online, but this issue of consistency, and this is I found really valuable for dealing particularly with the students, which is that if I say I'm going to email them, you know, in 2 days with these a particular list of assignments or things I expected them or further directives, I land that email to the minute because they're waiting for it. And I've been finding this, you know, where I do Zoom encounters with people, and if I'm a second late, everyone's going, Sarah, like calling into the Zoom, because our sense of time is very strange. You know, I'm a historian, I think of time in a long way. Time has been disrupted. It goes both quickly and very slowly, and it produces agitation. And I think if we're just very consistent and reliable in all of our encounters, it takes away a little of the rawness. And so if you can communicate well, be clear about what you're trying to do, and then just be consistent about it. I know it just sounds a little bit like Eat, Pray, Love, and I'm not trying to, you know, package an Elizabeth Gilbert, you know, guide to, you know, eating in Italy or whatever that book was about. I don't remember, but it's just, I think it is useful to be very consistent, and the students are so appreciative. Like they write back about how this has just made their day to know that that email came in, that they have these.
I can imagine.
And it touches me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I mean, teaching is a very emotional, or it always has been for me, an emotional interaction. And this would just probably, this situation would accentuate that emotion. David, what would you want to say? And then Pei Feng.
Yeah, so I think, so I have a motto that I try to instill in each of my classes, which is the need to be nimble and be humble. And I feel like those things work very well when I'm talking to people who are going to be future, you know, filmmakers, but there's a broader context, I think, to that. And what I've been trying to do is to reflect back on that with them, and to kind of use this as a chance to show them the need to be resilient and to be well prepared and to apply the rigor that they've learned, even if the projects that I'm assigning them on the face are non-preferred work, to show them that they can still get meaning out of something that they're not super excited to do, and then maybe find a way to get them excited about it in the middle. I recently gave them an assignment that I usually do with models. You know, we have human faces that we light with movie equipment, and we shoot with movie lenses and all those things. And we talk about surface reflectance and surface texture and things like that, and the importance of making good lighting decisions based on those things. And when you can't have models in a studio, I decided to use fruits and vegetables and items from my kitchen. And I pulled a work light out of my garage, trying to think what kind of limitations the students were under right now. And I didn't tell them that that's what I was doing, but I lit it. I basically did the assignment for them as a demonstration, and I manipulated the light with clean garbage, not with movie equipment at all. And the results are pretty fun looking. And then I gave them an assignment, say, okay, now you do it. Go grab 2 items from your house and garbage light the heck out of them and send them to me. And they really loved it. And I have a feeling I'm going to keep that assignment even when we come back.
Oh, fantastic. What a great story. I love it. Pei Feng?
Yes, I would say just be open-minded and adaptive. There are 2 sides to every coin. So this pandemic brings all kinds of challenges to our life, but also gives us the opportunity to try something new. For example, our clinic, in the past, our students just do one-on-one treatment type of intervention. But because of transition to telehealth, the family member, the caregiver, they are all being there. So it's a kind of bring everybody together to form that rapport. They know how to help with the therapy, and they can also carry out to do more homework and know how to help those kind of individuals. So because of the pandemic, bring people closer. Again, so that is another silver lining I wanted to share.
Remarkable. So social distancing brings us closer. That's how ironic is that? Sabrina.
I just want to say, just to have some compassion with yourself through all of this. Make sure you're taking care of yourself during all of the stress that you're experiencing, for the student and for the faculty member, right? So, again, going back to, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay because, we're all going through this, and we all process things the same. Some of us deal with things differently, but I think that one thing that I've had in my conversations with students is they're not getting the same experience across all of their courses. And so to some degree, they're feeling as if maybe they're being cheapened in one area and the other. And I use it as opportunity to say, think of what the faculty on the other end, you may like something I'm doing, but think about what they're going through and how quickly to turn around an online course in 2 weeks is actually unheard of, right? ATS will recommend, ATS will recommend, 6 months to design an online course. So it's an opportunity to have those conversations, to have compassion with one another. And it goes both ways for us to be considerate about the student, but for the student to also think about the immense pressure that faculty are feeling to be able to turn on a dime like this, and having a positive outlook and knowing that what we have in front of us is an opportunity to grow and for a student as much as possible to think outside the box and to actually settle into your role as a lifelong learner, right? Because it doesn't stop after that. So if you can build that discipline now in an online setting, how you're actually coming out the better. I wanted to say that.
Incredibly positive. Thanks, Sabrina. And Noah, you were nodding your head in agreement.
I really appreciate, Sabrina, what you shared about vulnerability, and several other people have echoed. I think there's a tendency in my field, in teacher education, for educators to get up there and pretend like we never make mistakes and everything is right. And of course, that's such a horrible example for future teachers. We learn more when we kind of open up about what's not working well. Or I talk about mistakes I made when I was a high school teacher in New York City, and then I open up about those and we say, what did I learn from that? And how did I go back the next day and try to become a better educator? And I think that, as several of you have mentioned, we are so interconnected. And a crisis like this, it really makes that evident. And so I hope that when we return to something more similar to the before times, that we keep all of those connections ever present. And they aren't just buzzwords or things that we say in emails, but that they're really present. One of the positive outcomes of this has been the ways that my colleagues and I are talking more about pedagogy recently. Like, we're talking about what's working, what's not. And sometimes we get into this false sense of complacency when things are going okay, where we're not asking those hard questions because we're doing things the way that we have for a certain period of time. So I hope that we'll continue with that. One of the things we say a lot in teacher education is we need to situate our work in people's lived realities, right? So before a 9th grader asks, why does this matter to me? We should have an answer that's evident at the front of the lesson, at the front of the unit. And I think that's so important for our work in tertiary education too. Why does this matter, especially now? To make sure that that is ever present when we're thinking about healthcare or calculus or accounting or how to become a teacher or mechanical engineering or whatever the case may be. And then the third thing that I would say to both my future teacher students and my colleagues is something that Daniel, you mentioned earlier with regard to technology. And there's a tendency in my field, and I'm sure in all of our fields, sometimes to just use technology for its own sake, right? So there's some shiny new bell and whistle, and we're gonna, start using it just because it's there. It's so important, I think, with curriculum design to take a backwards planning approach to say, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? What's not working well? And then look at what tool or tools are the best to help create that. And I've been thinking about that. I've made missteps with that this semester. I'm sure I'll continue to make missteps with that throughout my career. But I think that's a really useful perspective that has been hit home for me within all of this.
Remarkable. Thank you, Noah, for those 3 points. Daniel, what pick up from that and say, what would you want to tell everyone who's listening?
I think probably the biggest thing is we need to, or I need to, all of us, remember the person who in this crisis somehow, you know, I think all of us to some degree became at least a center point, whether it's in our community, our family. Someone at some point probably turned to us for an answer. And, you know, we may not know that answer, but somehow we work through it. And it's so easy nowadays, especially even though technology brings us closer, we were more distant, but, you know, being stuck in the house with someone all the time, you start to learn communication that you never knew. And you probably learned a lot more problem solving with this, you know, circumstance that's never been done before. And I would say keep that spirit alive. So when things go back, you're still that problem solver. You're still that thinker. You're still looking at, well, how can I help? And then rely on that community that you built. You know, when there was a crisis, you managed to build it. Our college helped us try to create that feel. Well, when things go back, I don't think we should lose that. We should, you know, keep it going. And it doesn't have to be through Zoom. I understand, but you know, as we go forward, I don't want us to lose that that person who survived and who made that change to thrive.
And so you're actually talking about the deep learning that we know comes from our higher education, and how remarkably you all have managed to access it and showcase it and highlight it and work with it with your students. It's incredible. Leslie, you get the last word.
I find humor in the fact that before this crisis, the biggest obstacle that I found that I was facing is being part of the math community with the sudden changes in AB 705 and how to help students who score into remedial math. And so that was the big buzzword prior to, you know, everything that was Corona. And I focused a lot of my time trying to figure out what was the best way to help students be successful in math where they haven't been before. And I've noticed with all the pre-recorded lectures and videos that I've been making, my students who maybe did not meet the prerequisites beforehand, or, you know, have needed more supplemental math, now that they have these videos, they will watch them over and over again. They will stop, they'll pause, they'll rewind, and it's actually helped significantly in their understanding and their learning, something that they couldn't do before in person. They couldn't just, you know, take a 1 hour lecture and make it 3 hours completely dedicated to them. And so the students in like Math 104 who I have actually told me that having the ability to do this and not feeling very, very rushed through the lecture, and it's helped them understand significantly more. And I just think it's pretty funny how one obstacle has helped, you know, not necessarily resolve, but help bring light to solutions for the previous obstacle we were facing. And I hope that we can take that and move forward with that in helping everybody, and not just math, but in all areas.
Well, that's incredible. And I think, you know, if it's a little bit of a tired trope to say that this is a war that we're engaged in, but one thing I do think of is that the generation that came out of the last war, the Second World War, was called the greatest generation. And I think that you all demonstrate why I think our generation who come out of this are going to be the next greatest generation. So thank you all for what you've done. I can't tell you how moved and impressed and exhilarated actually I am with your passion and skill and empathy and wisdom. And thank you again for taking the time to spend enlivening and enlightening and making my Friday afternoon much happier than my Friday morning has been. I'll take away the nimbleness, the humbleness, the communication, clarity and consistency, And I look forward to seeing you all in person, not too distant future. So thanks very much, and have a great weekend. You remember that it is the weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.